Hi, welcome back to Everyday Behavior. My name is Marianne Shepard. And in this series, we're talking about kind of those high intensity, low frequency behaviors. And sometimes those behaviors occur as part of a behavior chain. And you find yourself sitting there one day just asking yourself, how did we get here? Like, how did we get from where we were to this level of intensity, this severity? And you just wonder, how did we get here and how do we get it to stop? We've talked about in the last two videos with our stimulus class and our response class, rather than looking at those most intense, most concerning behaviors, to look at your less intense, higher frequency behaviors to see if they are part of the same stimulus class, so the same antecedents leading up to the behavior, to see if they're a part of a larger class of behaviors, a larger response class that lead to a similar consequence, a similar function of behavior. But one thing you also want to look at is, does the behavior occur as part of a behavior chain? And if the behavior is occurring as part of a larger behavior chain, a larger group of behaviors, can we break that chain? Can we intervene on the first behavior? So maybe you have a child who engages in severe aggression. Well, instead of looking at aggression as your target behavior, what are the behaviors that lead up to it? So is it that they start with whining about wanting something? I want a cookie. I want I want my Thomas train, or whatever it is. They start with whining about something. Then does that kind of escalate if you're like, oh no, you can't have that, or we don't have that, or that's not available, or whatever that is? Does that escalate to them beginning to scream? So if they whine and make a request and you say, oh, I don't have that, or that's not a choice, or that's not available, then do they start to scream? Okay, so we escalate from whining to screaming. Then if you're like, no, stop screaming, you can't have it, it's a no, does that escalate to threatening behavior where they're like, if you don't give me, I'm gonna hit you, and I hate you, and you're the worst mommy ever, and all of those things? Does it escalate to kind of that verbal aggression? And then from verbal aggression, does that then escalate into that physical aggression or those throwing items? Sometimes you don't see those middle behaviors. You don't see the steps 2 and step 3. Some kids just escalate straight from whining to straight aggression. But you want to see, are there any other behaviors that lead up to this? Because rather than waiting to intervene at the aggression, the high intensity behavior, the behavior that occurs less often, you want to look and see, is there a behavior earlier in the chain that we can intervene on? And so this may be in the classroom where the first time that maybe they start tapping their pencil obnoxiously. Okay. That's, what do they do before they're aggressive? And so it's always helpful to ask yourself, what is occurring right before they're aggressive? And what's occurring right before that? Is there something more manageable that's happening earlier in the chain that we can intervene on that behavior to break it from ever occurring? Because when you're picking up a chain, you pick up one link, and then another link, and then another link, and then another link. And if you can cut off that link, okay, now you've only got 2 links. That chain's a lot less heavy, right? So how can we cut the chain? How can we start earlier? And so when you're looking at that, if as soon as you notice the very first behavior that they start to engage in, get it down to what's the most manageable behavior, the first behavior that occurs, that what cues, okay, this is gonna happen. We know it's gonna happen when this happens. That's where we want to start intervening. And that's where you want to focus your preventative strategies. And so a lot of times what you want to focus on there are your replacement behaviors. So how would you rather they ask? Or how do they access it? Can we do some first then strategies? Can we do some timers or some discriminative stimuli? So really go back to those antecedent interventions. What can we do? Or skill-based interventions. So I encourage you to go back and watch our videos on skill-based intervention and skill deficits, or that antecedent intervention, visual schedules. What can we do to signal when they can have something? Can you use non-contingent attention to really intervene early on? But if they escalate to the next behavior, make sure that you're consistent at this step. Because variably responding, maybe you only give in every 4th time or every 10th time, but they know there's a chance. It's just like the slot machine. Okay, I'm just going to keep pulling. I'm just going to keep pulling. I'm just going to keep pulling, because someday she's going to give in right here. And so depending on how often you've given in and how long that pattern of behavior is going on, it may take a lot of consistency at step 2 or at that second behavior to really be consistent and teach them that no means no. And when I say it's not a choice, you know, we're relying on our antecedent strategies, we're relying on our skills, but when we get to this point, it's done. We're not going to negotiate at this point. So you may really have to follow through at that second chain in order to break that chain. But if they're escalating from there, you really want to make sure that you have a plan for step 3 to, again, intensify your consistency. And so here you may have those consequence strategies in place. So you may choose to do a level plan or some kind of planned ignoring or something like that, depending on the function of behavior. So really look at your functions of behavior. What is the function of this behavior? And how can we have some consistent strategies so that we're not inadvertently reinforcing at this level of behavior? So you really want to be consistent there. And then at the last step, just make sure not to inadvertently rely on bribery or negotiation at this step. Once you get to this step, it's really about crisis management and, you know, mitigating any damage or anything like that. But the real work in intervening on behavior does not occur at the aggression stage. It doesn't occur at that high intensity behavior. The real work of intervention comes from getting all the way to the root of the behavior, the very first behavior in the chain, and focusing all of your intervention on skill increase and you know, replacement behaviors at that first behavior, so that you're intervening there before you ever pick up the whole chain. Okay, so again, to de-escalate a situation, you can choose to intervene earlier in the behavior chain to reduce the severity. This is not an immediate fix. This is a long-term fix. So you're not going to typically see it right after that first time. That's why we tend to resort to consequence strategies, because it's an immediate stop. But sometimes that immediate stop isn't a long-term fix. And so you really have to look at, okay, how do we get to the root of the problem? What's the very first behavior? And typically our tantrums or high intensity behaviors do occur as part of a larger behavior chain. And so you really want to focus your assessment efforts on the whole chain of behaviors and those less intense, higher frequency behaviors. I hope that this information has been helpful and has helped you to really look more broadly at behavior rather than focusing in on one very severe behavior. As with all of our videos, these are created and developed by Everyday Behavior with Dr. Mary Ann in a partnership with the Oklahoma State Department of Education. I just want to say thank you for attending, and for more information, you can find more information on Everyday Behaviors, our website, or you can follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, or like our channel to receive more information. Thank you so much and have an excellent day.